Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today, we're going to take a fully spoilery look at Chapter 67 of Kaiju number 8. This chapter was painful, and I mean that in the most delightful way. I had to get up and wash a full load of dishes before the phone turned on. I was so on edge about this. In this chapter, Matsumoto gently takes up the remaining relationship storylines that have been dangling for over 30 chapters now since the battle at Tachikawa Base, and with a quick tug, winds them around our hearts and squeezes. It does not help with the emotional distress at all that Matsumoto also takes the chance to call out the mental and spiritual cowardice of 2 or 3 current generations in the process. We got imposter syndrome in the last arc, and now through the MC we get slapped in the face with conflict avoidance of the most personal kind. I swear, I know this is a shonen manga, that this is a story written for a different culture, a different core age group, really a different sex than me, but it still feels like Matsumoto is calling me out specifically, personally, with every chapter that isn't a direct combat chapter. I really wasn't happy with where I was in my life goals at 35, and dang nabbit, nothing worked to fix that except knuckling down and pursuing my dreams like a crazy woman. Yes, I know intellectually that I was a fully educated member of my team who contributed things well enough to get glowing reviews every year, but I still considered that I hadn't done anything worth doing. And for the love of Alexander Graham Bell, I am a grown woman, formally trained in how to answer phone calls since I was 15. But I still freaking panic at the sight of too many notifications, and my heart just stops when the phone rings, and I emotionally die if I accidentally hang up on somebody. The raw universal human suffering that Matsumoto manages to pour into his stories in the most minor aspects is amazing to me, and it keeps me coming back for more. Now, I am about to get into the spoilers, so if you don't want to hear all the grisly details, you can click the links below the video to get yourself a copy of my book, Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, Monty Python Meets Star Trek, and the short story collection of Human Absurdity. No, the stories are not connected, they're just all set in the same universe. Thanks to everyone for asking about that. Alrighty, now I am going to jump right into the controversy over this chapter, which I've really seen crop up a lot in previous chapters, looking back now, but I just kind of dismissed it. The controversy is mainly this. There is not an insignificant portion of our fellow fans who are not pleased with what they term the pacing of this manga. The argument is that between the frequent use of full-page spreads or half-page spreads and the lingering focus on this reunion between the characters, the mangaka was wasting time and page pace that could be spent furthering the plot. Nothing happened in this chapter, i.e. chapter 67, is a rough summary of the common complaints I see online. Now, at first that just floored me. Nothing happened? What do you mean? Everything happened. Each panel was doing at least 3 things. Plot lines and story arcs that had been building from the very beginning of the series are referenced, mirrored, carried forward. Reno, he's the one friend who's been with Kafka from the very first day this all started. Kafka is Reno's senpai, his mentor, his friend, possibly his victim, but that's barely hinted at in this chapter if it is at all, so we'll leave it for today. But Kafka's reconnection with Reno, even if it is only over the phone, is a massively important part of the story. Aiharu isn't as close to Kafka, but as the few other Defense Force officers who were personally saved by Kaiju number 8, who had that up-close look at the terrifying strength and mind-blowing power, their reunion was also critical. Then the chapter summarizes the other reunions with a paired image set of a phone screen and Kafka's reaction. Too slow? Drawn out to save storytelling time? Hardly. In my humble opinion, this went by way too fast. I wanted to see Aiharu personally thank Kafka for literally answering his desperate prayers for rescue. I wanted to see Kafka be approached by the 2 new-to-us characters who reveal themselves to be the masked Defense Force agents whose lives he saved by taking Number 9's finger bullets for them. I wanted to see them try to apologize for interrupting his chance to kill, to permanently defeat at least that one body of Number 9's. I wanted to see Kafka assure them that killing number 9 was never his goal, that he was there to get help from Rino and Iharu, and that instead of interfering with his arrival, their arrival completed his mission. This scene was far, far too short to be wrapped up in one chapter. So what was all this griping about the pacing being off, being artificially slow? Yet, there were a lot of people saying exactly that online. Well, at least half the comments on the one website I let myself peek at before I finished my full spoiler review had them. This was their honest opinion, and I try to come at difference of fan opinions by trying to understand that difference. To me, this chapter was a far too fast-paced resolution of story arcs I have been aching to see played out, and a critical part of the story development overall. To some, at least of my fellow fans, this was a slow, unnecessary diversion that was so pointless that they would have rather had nothing and gotten a better chapter in another week or two. Well, please feel free to correct me if you think I am off base, but I think I have figured out the difference. As much as I love shonen manga, from Dragon Ball to Yu Yu Hakusho, oh, please be kind, Netflix, to the recent and ever on edge cancellation Doron Dororon, I am after all a fangirl. And shonen is ultimately a boys' genre. One of the most easily measured differences between boys and girls, and this is a pattern that is even observed in chimps, is that boys are more interested in things and girls are more interested in people. In the storytelling format of manga, that translates into boys liking stories where robots punch kaiju, and girls liking stories where a homely girl confesses her emotional connection to another character. Boys are all about action, girls are all about relationships. These are, of course, generalizations, and there are of course, the great exceptions. Those manga and anime that sucked in boys and girls of all ages, for example, Dragon Ball, Pokemon, Sailor Moon. Their magic, they had copious amounts of action, the MC has to train and struggle to achieve their goal, and the MC and cohort is also forming relationships right and left. In short, there's something for everyone. The boys get to watch the MC lay the very physical beat down on the bad guy or gal, and the girls get to watch the MC tremble in fear as their great secret threatens to destroy the relationships that have connected them to the community around them. This balance is hard, even for the best writers, but it is the same principle used by Tolkien, Lewis, and all the great storytellers that have pulled in such large audiences. And it has the added storytelling benefit of being real. Life is complicated. The toughest Navy SEAL out there has his Mima back home, and the flightiest girly girl in your high school group is going to have to knuckle down and face reality at some point in her life, with all of the courage of a shonen protagonist. Now, to circle back to chapter 67 of Kaiju number 8. This chapter here, I don't know that Matsumoto put it in for the girls, but I know that I, a girl, found it incredibly satisfying. It is entirely possible that Matsumoto just felt that to tell the best story that he could, it was critical to show this emotional bonding chapter. Kafka reuniting with his old unit, at least in spirit, if not, and online, if not physically. But it is far more a slice of life than battle manga chapter. And I think that this is what is causing the irritated reaction in the fandom. Not to fear, we will soon get back to punching kaijus, my brothers. But how does Matsumoto bring these heart-wrenching emotions into play? We open on Kafka doing his squadron-style combat training, as the memory of a far, far too pleased Vice Captain Hoshina teaching him plays in his head. Look, lunges hurt, and our dear Soshiro looks like he is giving more than a little sadistically out of making Kafka torture his body with what amounts to 5 different kinds of fancy lunges. I speak from personal experience here. And then we get this scene that I have been waiting for. Kikoru Shinomiya walks in on Kafka training. At first, she seems unaffected, as if she's playfully mocking his lack of ability to use weapons with backhanded approval. But when Kafka breaks down as he does and complains to her about these exercises being tough, Kikoru's eyes get a far-off look and she gently reassures him that she knows. Her daddy used to do them every day. And that sets Kafka back on his emotional heels. This is such good character growth and development for Kikoru. It tells us so much. She is grieving, but she has moved past the point where her grief cripples her. This pattern, this movement that in her mind must be such a massive part of who her father was, simply makes a tender spot blossom on her heart. And she trusts this clod of a man who touched that tender spot to let him see it. This says so much about her relationship with her father, her relationship with Kafka, and her own growing personal strength. Mwah! That was perfect. Then, of course, there's the humorous side of the chapter where we, or at least I am sure that you all are perfectly balanced and functional adults after all. Anyway, the side of the chapter where I was crippled in sympathetic cowardice. There are far, far too many notifications in my inbox. What do? This can only mean that the internet hate is coming for me. Oh, sweet Alexander Graham Bell, the phone rang and my heart stopped. What if they want to yell at me? Ah! I accidentally refused the call. What if I think they hate them? What if they think I hate them? These are all sensations that I think most of us can relate to. That series of pages was both hysterical and, well, painful. Matsumoto has a downright genius for calling out the moral failings of my generation. Also, it is telling how the whole phone sequence starts. Before we even see Kafka, Matsumoto spends 2 panels just establishing how alone Kafka is in this moment. He's been locked in that basement of the military base for 2 months now. He's been cut off from his friends, and every time he walks that long corridor to go back to his quarters, his cell, he's being reminded that the defense force still views him as a threat that could go feral at any moment. This really puts his reaction to his friends in perspective. Every single night, every single day that he goes back to his basically prison cell, he's being reminded that he is seen as a threat, that he's not fit to live with other human beings. Heck, living down in that bunker is a reminder to him that he believes that he's a kaiju threat that could go feral at any moment. This man has to fight down his own fears born from being possessed by a kaiju parasite every day for months longer than anyone in the defense force has, even if the fight with Iso Shinomiya drove it home that the little guy inside him can take over whenever it really wants to. Kafka is alone with this in a very real way, and the image of him sitting on the floor of that bare cell, a weapon stored in the armory. It sets up a chilling contrast to, and a through line for, the eventual heated and wholesome reactions of his friends. Yes, they are afraid of him. Reno is nice enough to lie about it, but Aiharu is made of blunter stuff. Of course, Reno, Aiharu, and the rest of the squad are terrified of that power. So is Kafka. But they are still ready to back up their friend. So, what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Does this manga have pacing issues, or does it have universal appeal that can sometimes be a bit boring to the current elements of the fandom that's not being catered to? Let me know what you think about the pacing in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button, and peace out, my wonderful viewers. Humans are weird. We took a vote, and humans are weird. I have the data. 2 books in a series of human absurdity. Go check out these short story collections. What will our little green friends think of us when we finally do make it to space? Find out the answer in 2 books of human absurdity. Humans Are Weird, We Took a Vote, and Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and Google Play.